Well, hi, everybody. I'm Nate Eaton, and here in our studio today is Congressman Mike Simpson, who has been in eastern Idaho a couple days in Twin Falls yesterday for the big yogurt celebration.
Yeah, and I was in Pocatello the day before that at ISU and taking a tour of it and their new facilities and what's going on there that's really exciting.
It's been kind of slow in Washington since January.
Yeah, we really haven't had much to do.
Yeah. How would you say the first 2 months of the Trump administration are going?
They have been both exciting and sometimes worrisome and all that stuff. But I tell people, don't set your hair on fire yet. They're going through the administration, or is going through the budget and how we spend our money. And I think that's what people wanted us to do, is to go look and see where the waste and fraud and abuse is and limit the size of government. But anybody that thought we were going to turn around our fiscal order, our fiscal house, and start getting toward a balanced budget and start paying off our debt instead of adding to it, anybody that thought we were going to do that and it wasn't going to involve some pain was living in a fantasy world. So there's going to be some things in there that they recommend. There'll be things I agree with. There'll probably be some things I disagree with. But I'm glad they're doing what they're doing.
Did they come in too quick with the chainsaw rather than the scalpel, as President Trump tweeted a week or two ago?
Well, I would have done it different than they did, but I understand why they did it. And they might be right. This might be the only way you could do it. I mean, this is such a huge bureaucracy that runs the federal government stuff. It might be the only way you could do it was to go in with the metaphorical chainsaw and eliminate things. As an example, when they decided they were going to take all probationary employees and fire the probationary employees. Most of the time you think that's just someone who's just there has been there for a year or less, or something like that. And there's a reason they did it, which I'll explain in a minute. But probationary employees also include employees that may have worked for, say, the Forest Service for 20 years, got a promotion, then they're probationary in that new position. So all of a sudden, are they probationary and subject to fire? Those kind of things weren't made clear when it first started. And when we've talked to Elon has actually said, listen, we're going to make some mistakes. We want you to tell us where they are and when they are and that kind of stuff, and we'll correct them. But he knows that everything is not going to be perfect. But it may well be that this is the only way you could do it.
We get calls probably daily from people concerned about veteran issues in East Idaho, that DOGE is going to affect that, and the INL.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts? Is the INL going to be affected by these DOGE cuts?
Well, first of all, with veterans, we made sure we took care of those. We put it in the continuing resolution that just passed. We put like $6 billion more into the VA to make sure that we were making up for any potential losses and stuff. But should they examine the VA? You bet. Some places it's not run very well. You get to the Boise Center and the Boise Veterans Home and Hospital, they've been operating great. I've never had any complaints against them. But there's others where it's not running so well. So let's take a look at it and see if we can do it better. With the INL, I would be reluctant to say it won't affect them, but I'm not worried about it. Primarily because Secretary Burgum and Secretary Wright of Energy and Interior have been put in charge of this committee that they created to make America energy independent again. And I've spoken with Secretary Burgum, and he realizes the importance of nuclear power, and that if you're ever going to get totally energy independent, you've got to have nuclear power. So they're very supportive of that. And of course, that's Idaho National Lab being the lead nuclear lab. That's big for them. But they also do a lot of other things out there. They do things that are important in terms of cybersecurity and that type of thing. So I think the administration will focus on that. But what's going to be important is what the president's budget says when it comes out, probably in a month to 6 weeks. We'll get his recommendations, and then we'll see what they've incorporated into it or not. But right now, I'm not too worried about the INL.
So you're saying people working out there shouldn't be either?
I don't think so.
Let's talk about tariffs. 2018 retaliatory tariffs cost Idaho, mainly farmers, $15.4 million in potato exports, $14.4 million in cheese and whey, $1.1 million in export revenue from pork and ham. Canada is our top export partners. Will his proposal, Trump's proposals for these tariffs, hurt Idahoans?
First of all, I don't know why we're in a fight with Canada. I really don't. They're our neighbors. They've been our friends. They've been by our side all the time. But for some reason, we picked a fight with Canada, and where they're booing the national anthem at hockey games, our national anthem and stuff. That shouldn't be. We should still remain friends, and I hope this doesn't turn into a trade war between us and Canada and stuff. But in terms of tariffs, I basically don't like tariffs at all. Tariffs are a hidden tax on people that consumers pay. Because if the company that is being tariffed and has to pay that tariff doesn't raise their prices because of that, eventually they'll go out of business. So it means consumers ultimately pay those tariffs. So I've always been opposed to tariffs. But what they're saying is we're going to have reciprocal tariffs, which is a distinction. If you charge us 50% tariff on a product coming into your country, then we're going to charge you 50% on those same things coming into our country. That seems to me to be fair. And I think in the long run, what will happen is worldwide, you will see tariffs go down because some countries exporting to the United States, we're the biggest market in the world. It's important to them. So I think you'll see companies or countries lower their tariffs in the long run in order to make sure that the United States doesn't retaliate with retaliatory tariffs. Is it painful for a while? Probably so. When they did this before, and the numbers you just mentioned and what it cost agriculture and stuff, Congress actually stepped in and did an emergency supplemental for agriculture because of the impact it was having on the agricultural industry. And so I wouldn't be surprised, depending on how this turns out, if something like that happens again.
Speaking of money, tariffs, let's talk about inflation. What more can be done to bring down inflation, stabilize things?
Best thing you can do is well, first of all, it's coming down, but you'd never know that by listening to some people. But the inflation rate is going down. But what you've got to do is, I think, make it cheaper to buy energy. Everything you use has energy involved in its production and stuff, and the price of energy in the United States has been going higher than it should be. We can bring those down by making our country energy independent again and using the assets we have to do that. So I think that's one of the biggest things that you could do to help reduce the inflation costs, because that's going to reduce the input costs for everything from fertilizers that farmers use to heat processing and other things. So I think that's one of the biggest things we can do.
Wildland firefighters are about to get a raise.
Yep.
Across the country. You're the chairman of a committee or a subcommittee that deals with this. Tell me a little bit about that bill. That's something that I was unaware of until doing some research this morning.
Well, for the last 3 years, I think it is, we've given them the raise, but it's been a 1-year thing. It depends on the next Congress to maintain that raise. So we tried to make it permanent, which we did in the continuing resolution, and I've been the author of that for a long time. It will help with our retention of our firefighters and recruitment of new firefighters. We've got 11,000 wildland firefighters out there that protect us and stuff, and man, the job they do, they were getting about $11 an hour. You can make more money than that flipping burgers, and that's just not right. So I think that this is one of the important things that got through in the CR. So I was very glad it did.
Let's talk about Ukraine and Russia.
Yeah.
Should the United States continue to support Ukraine?
I want to see how these talks go between Ukraine and Russia. The one thing I don't think we should do in the end is that Russia believes that it was worth their time, effort, blood, toil, whatever, to invade Ukraine. So that gives them the incentive to try to do that maybe to the Baltic states or something like that. That's of concern, I think, to everyone. They can't be viewed as having won this. So I'm a little kind of nervous about where these talks lead, and if it ends in that. But I think we should support Ukraine. I voted to support them in the past, and they were the ones invaded. Putin trying to say that it's Ukraine's fault is a bunch of nonsense.
Another issue that we're contacted a lot about is Social Security.
Yeah.
The fear that cost-cutting efforts might jeopardize seniors out there. I know, President Trump has said it's not going to be touched, neither is Medicaid, Medicare. Yeah. But should people be concerned? I mean, is this a legitimate concern that maybe not cut, but money could go down, that the payments could go down?
Well, let me start by saying Social Security is kind of insecure right now, in that we're spending more money than we are taking in Social Security. And automatically, and I think it's 2033, so it's only like 8 years down the road, there will be an automatic cut in Social Security payments of 27% if we don't do something. And Congress is really good at putting it off. We all know that we've got to do something to reform the system, not to take away any benefits from people that are getting benefits now or those that are within, say, 10 years of retirement. But you've got to change the system for the younger people. So that needs to be done, and I think that's what we will be looking at in the next couple of years, is trying to see how you reform that system, because there's a lot of ideas out there about how you could do it. We need to sit down and debate them, but you know, Social Security is third rail in politics. You touch it, you die. And so politicians are very reluctant to go in and say what I just said, that we've got to reform the system. But anybody who thinks that we're going to go in and I'm going to cut my 98-year-old mother's Social Security doesn't know me very well. There is no intention of cutting any of Social Security payments. I understand why people are concerned, because they're seeing a lot of things cut. But there is no intention in Congress or in the White House of cutting Social Security payments.
Senator Crapo was greeted with protesters the other day in Garden City who are calling on him to hold some town halls. Do you plan to hold any town halls?
Don't have any scheduled right now. We'll see in the future when we get home.
Do you think they're important?
Depends. I've seen some that, and I've talked to some of the members that have had it and said, they've been, what's the best word to use, infiltrated by people from even outside the district, and everything else has been set up. And if people are there to discuss an issue, I think that's fine. But if you're just there to yell and throw signs and all that kind of stuff, then they're not really very helpful. They're just kind of a media show.
What are your priorities going forward for the next year?
First thing I think we got to do, the one thing that I'm working on probably harder than anything, is trying to make sure we get the ag immigration reform bill done. We've got to, if you were trying to deport all of the people who are here undocumented working in the agricultural industry all across the country, we wouldn't be able to produce the food we produce to feed ourselves. And so we've been trying to reform that system. We've passed a bill in the House twice. Haven't got it through the Senate yet for a variety of reasons. It was very hard to do because of what was happening at the border the last 4 years. So now that things have calmed down there, I think maybe we can get the administration and everyone in Congress to focus on the fact that we've got to have some visa reform in the ag industry. And people will say, well, you're just rewarding the people that have come here undocumented. No, in our bill, we let them come out of the woodwork. They get a permanent green card. They have to pay a fine, go through a criminal background check and everything. So these are people that have been here for 10, 15, 20 years working in our agricultural field and stuff. So we're trying to solve that, and that's the biggest issue facing agriculture right now. And in fact, it's probably the biggest issue facing almost every industry I talk to. Where are you going to get the workers to fill these jobs? They're not taking jobs from Americans in agriculture, especially in the dairies. They had a couple of years ago, a guy told me they had 4,000 openings across the nation on dairy farms, and you have to get a visa, you have to try to fill those jobs with Americans first. You have to advertise and all that kind of stuff. Out of those 4,000, they filled 4 of them with Americans. These are jobs Americans don't want and generally won't take. So they're doing a valuable service in this country, and I think we ought to find a way to create a legalized workforce.
And you know how big agriculture is here in East Idaho, and we were talking about the Chobani expansion in Twin Falls. They're going to need a lot more ag workers. Yeah. What is, you mentioned the administration, what is President Trump like in meetings when the cameras aren't on and we're not seeing, the showman? He's kind of a different guy. He's much more personable than you would get the idea of when you see on TV that he's always against something. But he's an interesting guy. He's a guy you'd like to sit in a bar, although he doesn't drink or whatever, and have a cup of coffee with or a beer with, and sit and shoot the bull, because he's very bright in his own way, and it might not be the same thing that we have seen, but he's been one of the most brilliant businessmen around. So, it's hard to criticize what he does. Right. I've heard he has a very good sense of humor as well. He does. Yeah. He does.
Yeah, I find him nice and fun to be around, but I will tell you that it's sometimes the things he says makes people in press conferences and stuff make people just shake their head, and stuff. I understand that. I tell them to focus on the policy. What policy is it you disagree with and stuff? Generally, they can't come up with much.
Well, thanks for stopping in, Congressman Mike Simpson. Thank you for watching.